thought this was a Zoom.
It is. Well, but it's going on YouTube. It's being played in 74 countries in 16 different languages. It is. Well,
I would have won a tie.
Okay. Okay, you guys are live now, and I'm admitting a couple more people in.
That's the characters.
we're missing the women,
Diana
Diana and Daria.
and
Here's Diana.
Justin.
I'm early for my meeting, so
are you on all committees, Justin? Is that how it works?
not this one.
Well, it's funny because we talked about it just earlier today. So,
That's why he gets paid the big bucks.
Oh, yeah, just forget to get that check.
yeah.
Hey, Joe, are we still waiting for anything?
No, you can go ahead as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. If the clerk can call a roll.
All right, Councilor Paz,
Present.
Councilor Vidal,
Present.
Daria Gear, James LaCrosse,
Present.
Robert Waters,
Present.
Diana Young,
Present.
Chairman Stanley.
Present.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Do we have the minutes from the previous meeting?
December 14th minutes are on the docket here.
All right. Councilor Vidal moves to accept the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it. Okay, welcome everyone. Tonight is our last meeting with a guest speaker, and we're privileged to have Mr. John Gollinger, the Executive Director of the Waltham Housing Authority, here with us tonight to give a presentation about what the Waltham Housing Authority does. And I'm sure he has a lot of information. As many of you know John, he's been working in the housing field in Waltham for a long time, and is very knowledgeable about what has been done in the city, what is being done, and perhaps what might be done differently. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. John Gollinger.
Thanks, Tom. Good evening, everyone. I'm fortunate to have lived so long in this community that I think I know everybody here, and have known them for a while, most of them. Yeah, I've been the executive director since the end of 2015, early 2016, of the Waltham Housing Authority. Prior to that, assistant director since 2003. We have a lot of different programs, housing programs. We run over 800 housing units, and it's quite a mixture, and it's quite scattered throughout the community. We have approximately 22 housing sites. We have a state program with a little more than, I'm going to do this all from memory, so please, I'm just approximating numbers, but approximately 545 state housing units, which are essentially family public housing units, the large developments, Prospect Terrace, Chesterbrook, Dana Court. Then we have about over 220 elderly disabled units, and those are smaller developments such as Beaver Street, Grove Street, which is called Beaver Brook. Myrtle Street, we have a small place. We have one on Orange Street. We have one here on School Street. And then we have a federal program with 265 units. It's all elderly disabled, one-bedroom units. Where I am, my office is a federal site. We have one over on Dale Street, one on Cedar Street, and one in Lower Pond, and a large high-rise over in Pine Street. So we run a diverse program. We own several houses that are leased by social service agencies and run as group homes through the Department of DDS and DMH. So that's housing stock that we own. We have title to it. We have subsidy agreements with the state and the federal government. They provide us with subsidy to make up for the difference in operating costs and the rent. And as you know, rent is determined by income. And if you are out of work, if you've lost your job temporarily or unable to work, and you're receiving public assistance perhaps, or something of that nature, pension, then we can reduce or increase your rent accordingly, according to your income. And quite honestly, this has been, I'm sure, a lifesaver for many of our residents during this pandemic, because those of whom have had to leave because of work, because of sickness, or family circumstances, or loss of jobs, have been able to afford to continue staying in their units because we reduce the rents. So in that sense, it's sort of recession, pandemic-proof housing. We also have a voucher programs, the Section 8 program, which we have about 415 vouchers out now out of an allowable amount of 450. And we have the Waltham Local Voucher Program, and I'm going to say we have a little bit under 25 people on that program presently, although their rental agreements, their subsidy agreements, some of them are coming to an end. Some have already come to an end. And that's a program established by the city, as most all of you know. The Section 8 program has been in existence since I think the late 80s, early 90s, in its present form. And that's an ongoing thing. It seems to be well funded and popular on both sides of the aisle in Washington, D.C. So I think that'll be a program continuing for the near future. Again, it's sort of recession-proof, pandemic-proof housing, because income is the determining factor in how much rent you pay. So we haven't really had a lot of people who've had to move because of the pandemic. We have a lot of people trying to get into our developments because of the pandemic at this time. That's pretty much an overview of our operation. We have 30 employees. Half of them are maintenance, the other half administrative. We're always looking for good help too. We have people who retire, and we have a couple retiring very soon. So if you know anyone who's looking for a maintenance job or an administrative job, send them down, have them file an application. But that's what we do. We house over 1,200 families. Probably, I'm going to approximate the number, probably 1,250 families, maybe a little bit more than not just in the Waltham community, I might add, although the bulk of them are in there. Section 8 is a mobility program, and you can live wherever you wish. You could move to Hawaii, and why more people don't do that, I'm not sure, but they do have the ability to do that, take their voucher anywhere, and we more or less transfer vouchers between housing authorities from time to time. And but if they're local meaning within 20, 25 miles of Waltham, continue to manage those. So we do have people in Dorchester, we have in Revere, close to Worcester, places like that on our Section 8 program, but not many. But I'm open to questioning. I'm open to.
Sure. Thank you very much. Diana, you raised your hand.
Oh, can't hear you.
You're on mute, Diana.
There, sorry. Hi, John.
Hi.
Hi. I had a couple of questions. How long is the waiting lists? And I assume that they might vary between senior and other housing. How many years are they still?
Well, we have, let's see, what do we have? We have 4 waiting lists. We have Section 8, and I'm going to tell you that that's probably an 8 to 10 year waiting list.
Oh,
There was some movement in it a while ago, but it's sort of slowed down a little bit since the beginning of the pandemic. It was moving a little faster than that, but I would say right now, you plan on a good 8 years, perhaps a little bit more. Our elderly housing, surprisingly, isn't too bad. On the state level, it's a little longer. I'm going to say 3 to 4 years. Federal list is between 2 and 3 years. And there's a reason for that, and I can get into that if you wish. But the family list is a little longer too. That's probably 3 to 4 years at this point. One of the problems, I won't call it a problem, that's probably not the correct terminology, but one of the issues that we have with regard to our waiting list on the state side is the emergency application program. If you qualify as an emergency, and there's a lot of different reasons. It could be medical emergency, it could be domestic violence, it could be several things. If you qualify as an emergency, you can make an application and you jump the line. You go to the head of the list. Of course, the emergency list seems to be getting longer and longer. And now that we have the statewide waiting list, we have every emergency in Massachusetts is potentially on our list. So that creates a little bit of an issue for us. Most of those emergencies won't come to Waltham. I'd say the great number of them won't. But it still makes the list a little bit longer than it really needs to be. So it's difficult to project how long it would be before families might be housed. It's not so much a problem in the elderly disabled waiting list. So in any event, that's the issue. I'd probably say realistically a family is close to 4 years at this stage.
Can I ask one more on the Section 8? You mentioned that we have 415 vouchers out of 450.
Hello, yes.
How do you get that extra 35?
Well, it's a struggle. I don't know if you recall a few years ago, we had, what was the economic term, the downturn, sequestration. The federal budget minimized the amount of revenue that we could get for Section 8. So we couldn't lease, we had to let people go. We didn't have to throw anyone off the program, but we couldn't lease up. And we were in the mid 300s in terms of vouchers because we weren't allowed to lease up because of budget considerations. And that that went over, that was over, and then we were leasing up. And then you had this significant economic situation in the city of Waltham in Greater Boston, where the rents just started going through the roof. So every year on your Section 8 allocation, it's based upon the prior year, and then they give you something in the nature of a 2% inflation. And after you get that 2% inflation, you have X amount of dollars, but you have rents going up to incredible amounts. I mean, Diana, years ago, you and I talked, and I said the average Section 8 rental subsidy was about $1,000. Well, that was not that long ago, and now it's closer to $1,500. And that's really the rental market in Waltham and Greater Boston has gone sky high. And we did get a little more money for that, and we have been inching our way upward. But it's been a hard road to get back to where we really would like to be. I mean, the more vouchers we have out there, the more administrative fees we get. So it's in our interest to do that. And obviously our job is to house families. We like to do that, but we also have to, I talk with HUD weekly, and they ask us, well, how many people have vouchers or looking for apartments? How many people are in apartments? Do you have any people that will be leaving? What's your waiting list look like? How much money do you have? This is how much money you can project on getting. And it's a balance. And 1 week they'll tell me, oh, you can lease up a few. And then next month they're saying, oh, better not lease anymore. It's a high wire approach.
I don't know if this might be a question both to you and to Bob. Are rents stabilizing because the economy's doing so badly? Are they going down at all, or at least not going up so fast?
I have seen them coming down, and then I just read an article in the Globe, and Waltham at one point was the highest inflationary increase in rents, second or third in the state. Cambridge has kind of been first, pretty much the whole time they've been doing this. And now we're down to about 10th, 11th or something like that. And there has been a drop for the last year or two in rent standards. Bob, if you might have a better feel for that.
That's what we're seeing with our rental assistance programs, that the rents have come down a little bit. You know, a lot of students didn't come back, right? So
Yep.
there seem to be some deals at the bigger apartment complexes too, offering so many months to sign. So yeah, we are seeing that.
We've had a lot of new apartments come online too. So,
That's a good point.
It's interesting. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Councilor Paz, did you want to ask any questions?
Yeah. First and foremost, great to see you, John. Thank you for your efforts during the pandemic. I'm sure it's been a tough job through and through.
Certainly different.
Yeah. Also would like to thank you for your work in weatherizing a lot of our public housing now that we have an energy advisor. That's been a great development.
Yes.
My question's more towards Waltham's voucher program. I think you mentioned 45 families. Could you speak a little bit to the history behind that? And
I think I said 25 families presently.
25.
Yeah, that's what we have on the roster right now.
Yeah, could you speak a little bit to the development and execution of those vouchers?
Well, a few years ago, the city generously provided us with $1.8 million to provide a program of rental assistance to Waltham residents to rent apartments in Waltham. And it differed a little bit from our regular Section 8 voucher in that it had a minimum contribution from the voucher holder of $300. And so we had that money was transferred to us. And we invested it in the bank, and we ran a lottery, and we had about 300 and trying to remember off the top of my head, about 380 people who applied, and we ran the lottery and we placed everybody in their respective winning positions. We've probably had 50 people assisted, 50 different families assisted throughout the history of this. It started in 2017, at a difficult time for us, personnel-wise, but that's another issue. And it took us a while to get people on the program. It's a gradual thing. You can't just automatically put a whole bunch of people on the program. And then there was also financial issues. That was about the time, if I remember correctly, that the rent started going through the roof. And when we were talking about setting this up, we estimated an average $1,000 a month rental subsidy, but the average rental subsidy presently is almost $1,500. So we weren't able to lease to as many people as we had hoped to initially because of the cost of the rents. We're sort of winding down the program now. We have about another, I think, well, financially, we have about $450,000 left in the program, of which almost $300,000 is committed to existing voucher holders. We have some other expenses. Watches is doing case management for us, and we have to pay them every year. Speaking of watch, there's Daria. And we have to account for those expenses, but we'll be utilizing all the money. I can guarantee that all of the money that the city lent us, all that $1.8 million, and I know there was more money involved, but some of that involves administrative fees, certain other fees. But all that 1.8 will all be utilized for rental assistance. Actually, a little more because we did pretty well in terms of interest on the money that was provided us. So we'll put that money towards probably some expenses, but also to housing vouchers.
It's always great when interest rates help us out. Yeah, would you say now that rents are essentially going down, at least marginally, we can stretch our dollars per se through the vote if we replenish some of those funds?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure it'll be a significant impact, Jonathan, based on the number of people that are going to be expiring, whose assistance is going to be expiring over the next year or so. But yeah, it'll help a little bit, no doubt. A lot of the people are locked into leases anyway, so.
Right, but just thinking about new families.
We can probably get a few new families on, but not many. I wouldn't think many because we have to guarantee them 36 months. And that was the way the program was established. And,
Great. Could you briefly maybe explain what's happened to your budget, at least within the past 4 years?
our budget?
Yeah, like have there been any significant investments in the Federal Housing Authority cuts or just?
The federal budget has been, I won't say it's been level funded, but there have been meager increases. There was a fairly significant increase in our housing choice voucher program when they determined that there was a lawsuit brought by several communities, housing authorities who had felt that HUD was underestimating the rental market in the greater Boston area. So we did get a bump up in that amount of funding. Our public housing funding on the federal side has been, as I said, somewhat meager. On the state side, we have had actually 2 years of very significant increases. This was the year was the biggest increase state public housing has got to their operating funds in many, many years. But it's offset by the fact that our rental income is way down because of the pandemic. But I think that was the motivation behind, and perhaps Tom might know a little more about that than I do, but I think the motivation behind such a large increase is both the House and the Senate and the governor were aware that the rental receipts were going to be much less, and they have been significantly less. I can get you the figures on that. I'm going to say it's been at least 25% less this last half of our fiscal year, and it's not getting better. So that's been a help. I think that Tom would know what the motivation was from the House of Representatives, but I will tell you that it was money that we needed. I'm not sure that it's going to allow us to do much more overall, but I'm hoping it will.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Unless there's any other questions by the members of the committee, I think, well, we have run out of time. I know the long-term debt committee meeting will be starting in just a few minutes. So I'll entertain a motion by Councilor Vidal to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you very much. Mr. Much for your time
Welcome.
and the information that you sent along earlier today. We greatly appreciate it. Have a good evening and a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
All right, so we'll
Sure.
take a little time off and the next meeting is going to start in a minute.
Okay.
Okay, so Councilor Darcy and Clerk Magno, you're still up. So
I am here.
I know Chairman Darcy's there, but he looks like he's muted.
I'm here. What time is it?
It is 5:58.
Okay, we have a couple minutes then.
Yep.
Clerk Vizard, will you just check my microphone? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're coming through clear, Councilor.
Okay, thank you.
It's 6 o'clock on my phone, so could the clerk please call the roll?
Sure. Councilor Durkee.
Present.
Councilor McMenimen.
I'm present.
Councilor Paz.
Present.
Councilor Stanley.
Present.
Chairman Darcy.
Present. And would the clerk please read the first matter?
First matter is the minutes of November 2nd for the committee.
On that matter, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Councilor Durkee makes a motion to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Could you read the next matter?
All right, first new matter. The CPC recommendation for the allocation of CPA funds for the construction of affordable housing units at the Waltham Armory.
Is there someone here representing that matter?
Mr. Barrett is here from the CPC.
Great. And are there any other members here for this matter?
Mr. Chair, I believe we also have a member of Metro West.
Great. So Councilor McMenimen makes a motion to hear from all off-committee members. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? The ayes have it. Chair Barrett, could you give us a Reader's Digest compendium on this filing?
It is for $5 million for renovation for affordable housing for 23 units for the old Armory on Sharon Street. And it is being done by Metro West Collaborative Development. And I believe Jennifer Van Kampen is on the call. So if she is much more conversant than I.
Can you please repeat that?
She is much more conversant on this than I. It's her proposal.
Okay, great. So perhaps we could hear from her at this point in time, if you want to expound on this project.
Sure. Thank you very much. So I'm Jennifer, Executive Director of Metro West Collaborative Development, and we are a nonprofit community development corporation. As you saw in the CPA application, we are proposing to create 23 or 24 units of affordable rental housing in the Waltham Armory, which would be a mixture of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. And of course, it would redevelop a blighted, long empty building and restore a historic building that is on the National Historic Register. The project will utilize $5 million from local resources, as well as $5 million from state and federal resources and a $2 million private loan. And we would expect to permit it under Chapter 40B as what's called a project eligibility letter, which I can go into in more detail for anyone who's interested. But the approximate timeline we would hope for would be getting site control wrapped up in January or February at the latest, and then starting the comprehensive permit process, which could take the better part of the year next year. We would also, during that time frame, submit applications to the state Department of Housing and Community Development, as well as the Secretary of State, which manages the Historic Tax Credit Program. We would submit those applications next year, 2021, and we would hope to get all of that all wrapped up, the financing and the permitting, so that we could go into construction in early 2022. But I'm sure you have a lot of questions, so.
Yeah, just some bookkeeping questions before I open it up to the other members. On this proposal, who would ultimately be the owner of the site?
Right, so Metro West Collaborative Development owns all of its developments in perpetuity.
Okay.
Let me clarify that. Metro West Collaborative Development sets up limited liability corporations, which are called single purpose LLCs, in order to own and operate real estate. And Metro West Collaborative is what's called the managing member of those LLCs.
Okay. And on your application, you stated that application appraisal is attached, are you referring to the city assessed value, or was an independent appraisal conducted?
Yes, an independent appraisal was conducted and it was provided to the CPC.
Could
It
you
may-
provide that to the clerk of this committee?
Yes.
Thank you. And then also, I believe that there are historic covenants attached to the property.
Point of
And-
order, Mr. Chair, excuse me.
Yes,
If you wish
Counselor?
to discuss and debate the matter as chair, I suggest that you wait until all of the other members of the committee have asked their questions, and then you certainly have every right to do that. Right now, I think this should be open to other members of the committee. Thank you.
that's fine. So I'll continue with this last question and then I'll open it up. I believe that there are historic covenants attached to the property, and if you could please provide them to the clerk. Both the covenants in the form of deeds and also the approved application to the National Register of Historic Places. Would you provide?
I will endeavor to locate all of those.
Wonderful, thank you. First on the list, Councilor McMenimen.
I didn't want to say that I wanted to be first on the list. I was challenging the parliamentary continuation of the discussion. However, since you decided that I will be the first, let me be the first. And thank you for that, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So I would like to start by going through the application as I read it. And the first thing I'd like to ask is on the CPC motion roll call, I see that there were 3 negative supporters of the roll call to approve this CDC application. Is there somebody on Zoom here who could explain to me why and why it was not universally and unanimously accepted? Through you, maybe perhaps to hear from Mr. Barrett. Mr. Chair.
Mr. Barrett, could you explain the vote?
I can only explain, it was 6-3, 6 in favor, 3 opposed. I was one of the opposition, and I can't explain the other 2 because we did not discuss it. My opposition was I'm very much in favor of affordable housing. However, the acquisition figure is $2,990,000, which I feel that includes permitting, if I'm not mistaken, and the petitioner can certainly correct me. And I don't feel that property is worth anywhere near that. So that was my opposition.
Counselor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So that basically is your major opposition. Would the executive director of Metro West, the applicant, would they explain what their explanation is to that question?
Well, the independent appraisal that we obtained actually lists the appraised value at 2.9 million. As you might guess, appraising an armory is very hard to do. It is in a Residence B zone, so the only by right application to that site for residential use is a single or 2-family house. Now, obviously, nobody's going to buy it. Or I shouldn't say nobody, but it's highly, highly unlikely that anyone would buy it and tear it down and put up a single family house or even a 2-family house. So as a result, the appraiser has to make some assumptions about what the use will be. So the appraiser assumed what we are proposing, which is that 23 units will be allowed there. So the appraised value is based on a hypothetical 23-unit multifamily development.
Could you tell me, well, could anyone tell me, what is the assessed value of that property, building and land?
I can tell you that. The assessed value is $753,000. Which includes a building value of 133,000 and land value of 620.
Just for point of information, that those numbers do not concur with what's on the city's website. The city's website says that the total value is 776,000.
Okay, that may have been updated, and the assessment that we included in our application back in November was from the City of Waltham's assessor database, but perhaps it's been updated since then.
Great. Counselor?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. If you'll be patient with me, I'm trying to take notes here as well as go through my packet to ask my questions, as you know. So, Ms. Van Kampen, the appraised value that and you're going to provide that appraisal to the committee, our committee.
Yes.
And your appraisal that you received is for 2.9 million, and the assessed value is either 753 or 776,000. Okay, so basically, I understand the chairman of the CPC. I understand the argument that he's put forth regarding his point of view on this. I'd be interested to know why the other two members did not vote to support this. However, that being said, if I go through your application, excuse me, and I come to, so your total estimated development costs you have written down here at 12.9. And if I heard you correctly, you split that between 5 million, and you said from local resource. Did you mean the CPC?
Yes.
Was that the local resource?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the only local resource you mean?
Yes.
Thank you. And the 5 million from the state, who is that from, or what are you expecting that from?
It's actually a mix of sources. The primary source would be what's called the low income housing tax credit. After that would be the federal historic tax credit.
Are they spelled out here?
I'm sorry?
Are they spelled out in your application?
Yes.
Where are they in the application?
Probably on that same page where you saw the 12.9 number. There's a section called sources of uses. That's the list of the funding sources that we would apply for.
So what page would I find that in your application, please? It's not on that page with the 5 million, with the total 12.9. What page would I find that amount of money separated out, line item by line item?
I'm not sure what page. I can look for that for you.
Okay.
Sort of towards the back. Yes, Mr. Darcy has it there.
What page is that, Mr. Chair?
It says page 1, but it actually comes after page 4. So
Okay.
it's in the middle of the packet.
Page 1 after page 4. Okay.
It's the bottom part. So it says source of funds.
Sorry?
It's the bottom section of the source of funds is what it says.
Okay, thank you. And so now if I go to the next page in your application. So you gave a fairly simplified version of, I assume the reason that you are applying for a comprehensive permit in a 40B. But in section 3 on page 3 of this application, the site information, zoning, the building is located in a Residence B zone and multifamily housing is not allowed. And therefore we recommend, meaning you recommend, pursuing a comprehensive permit under chapter 40B. My question to that is, once you make that application, you then therefore have no other interaction with the Waltham City Council. You now will be interacting with the Waltham Zoning Board of Appeals. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So therefore, we will have no oversight over anything else that goes on here because there'll be no need for you to be at the table with us. Am I correct?
Well, there will be lots of public hearings, and I would imagine that you would be warmly welcome to attend those as part of the zoning, the zoning board of appeals process.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So therefore, on page 3, where it talks about dislocation, have you factored in here a timeline and an application and a cost for the demolition delay?
No.
Do you know that's
we-
required?
We won't be seeking a demolition.
I'm sorry, you still have to apply to the Waltham Historical Society in order for you to be exempt from a demolition.
Okay, well, as I described, the timeline takes multiple years to obtain the zoning and the permitting and the financing. So I'm sure we can work with the local historic commission to achieve whatever they need. They have already reviewed the project and issued a letter of support for the project. I think they are excited and eager to see the building reused.
Is the letter of support in this packet?
It is, actually, I'm sorry, it may not be. It was sent directly to the CPC.
Mr. Barrett, do you have that letter?
I think Julie may have it. We have 13 letters for it. I think they weren't in our package. It went directly to Julie, our manager. There were 13 in favor of the project, just 13 letters in favor.
Okay, I'd like to know who those 13 either individuals or groups were at some point. So Ms. Van Kampen, would you provide us, number one, a letter from the Historical Commission and what it says, and then a list of the other applicants in support of this project? That would be helpful. Going to page 4, please. So why is it that you would not seek a zone change that would allow and permit? If you were to seek a zone change for this location, why did your organization decide not to seek a zone change and go the route of a comprehensive permit?
The comprehensive permit process is one that we're familiar with. All new construction projects that we've been party to over the last few years have used the comprehensive permit process. It's pretty well established. People understand it. And we're eligible to use it because we will be applying for other state resources. So that is one of the 3 pathways to obtain a comprehensive permit. So from our perspective, it was just the most expedient way to move forward.
So, excuse me, if I go to page 4, where the historic portion of this, where you note, yes, identify, this is listed on the state and national historic registers. What restrictions does this create for your construction and development?
Well, the State Historic Commission will obviously want to review the plans. So we have reviewed the plans with the local historic commission and they are supportive. So we are hopeful that the State Historic Commission would also be similarly supportive. They're going to want to, they also, I should say, understand the challenges of redeveloping a site like this. So there will be a negotiation about what we can preserve, what we can change, what we can modify. The most striking, perhaps, design element that we are proposing are dormers in the roof, so that we can create a 3rd floor, and for those units to have light as required by building codes. So obviously the dormers are not an original feature. They will not be historic element. So that will be something that we will need the Historic Commission to grant us. So I'm not answering your question directly. I think the only real restriction is that the building cannot be demolished. It's on the National Historic Register. It cannot be demolished. Everything else is really a negotiation. For example, we're going to propose to build the elevator on the exterior. We're going to add a small addition to the exterior of the building in the rear that will house the elevator. They might not like that. They might say, you got to find a way to get that elevator inside the building. And then we will have to see how we can redesign the interior of the building to accommodate their requests.
Are you under the historic and the placement on the State and National Historic Register, are you obligated to maintain the footprint of the building?
Yes.
And are you obligated to maintain the facade of the building?
At some level, yes.
Are you able to take the interior right down to the studs?
It already is right down to the studs. So I'm not sure what that process was like, but as it currently is, there is nothing inside that building.
And the interior walls are all right down to the studs?
Down to the masonry. There aren't even any studs left.
What's holding the walls up?
Well, it's a masonry construction building.
Okay, thank you. So let's go to section 4, project schedule. All of the, so the first one I in the milestones, I think that you need to add inform ward councilors. I think you need to make a notation to inform all councilors and immediate abutters of proposed plans. If you're having neighborhood meetings, et cetera, I think all members of the city council should be notified that. Let me ask you this, in the line items that are listed here, for example, in the pre-development design, zoning and permitting, do you have line item costs elsewhere for these things such as acquisition, rehab, rehabilitation, construction, marketing, et cetera, et cetera? Do you have line item costs for those elsewhere in this project, in this paper?
Yes. So I think it would be probably the very next page of that budget has more detail in what comprises what are called the uses of the funds. So things like—
I don't have anything on the next page, I'm sorry. You'd have to give me a definite page number.
Well, the whole packet's not fully paginated, so sorry about that.
What whole pack? My packet is paginated.
Mine, the one I submitted to the CPC was not. So you and I are probably not looking at identical documents if yours has been paginated fully.
Well, then that's not helpful to me, quite frankly.
It's not, yes.
So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm going to stop for now, and I'm going to let the other members of the city council ask their questions or make their comments. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you. Into that end, I would like the request to be made in the form of a motion. So Councilor McMenimen moves, requests the applicant provide the 13 letters of support, including the Waltham Historical Commission, and the independent appraisal, and all historic documents be provided to the city clerk. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you, Councilor McMenimen. Next on the list is Councilor Vidal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate your
members.
Excuse me?
Just would like to move to hear from off-committee members.
We've already made a motion to hear from all off-committee members, and I just requested that Councilor Vidal be the next speaker, and then afterwards you can be the next speaker. Councilor Vidal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to speak here in your committee. Jennifer, thank you for your time. I have reviewed this document several times, and I also have reviewed the appraisal that took place in October of this year, correct?
Yes.
All right. As you know, when it comes to appraisal, the different ways to come up with the value of a property and to give you the highest and best value. And there is a sales comparison approach that was used on page number 6 and number 7, in which you listed 6 different properties. I'm not you directly, but the appraisal company. And these properties were pretty much all over the place. Went as far as Watertown, they went to Cambridge, they went to Brighton, even West Roxbury, and even Norwood. When it comes to this approach, the sales comparison approach, usually they stay within a certain area because, and I understand this is a very unique building. So what was the criteria here when it came to the appraisal and how it was handled? Because it pretty much went in the greater Boston area.
Right. The appraiser was looking for sites that were going to be, as an end use, multifamily residential developments. And as you identified, there aren't many. There aren't many of those transactions in any given year in any community. So the appraiser has to really look beyond just the one community in order to find those. And the other thing, of course, was trying to zero in on properties that were more in the same unit ballpark. Because obviously there are, and even in this appraisal, there are some that have as many as 60 units, and one that had as few as 4 units. So neither of those 60 units or 4 units are actually very comparable to this site. So I think the challenge is both limited by the number of transactions and then the really trying to get apples to apples with the type of transaction. Okay.
The apples to apples statement you just made is unfortunately, I don't think we can do that in this case. These are different properties altogether, and you're comparing something in Norwood to something in Waltham or even West Roxbury. Even though I understand where you're coming from and I understand the sales approach comparison, which I'm quite familiar with when it comes to residential and even commercial. But I'm just kind of wondering if this appraisal company that you have used, is this someone you have worked with in the past?
This is someone who's very familiar with affordable housing, residential development.
Okay, all right, great. That was because I do have a concern about the appraisal value of the property as it stands, and as you stated earlier, the property is down to the studs or to the wall. So best use is housing. So this is definitely kind of a surprise to me when it came to the value. The second thing you mentioned earlier about using or creating dormers on the 3rd floor. Is the reason for dormers, or the idea of putting dormers up on this historic building so you can maximize the amount of units to come up to 23 units, or is a dormer scenario not really a need for that, having dormers or not having dormers?
The dormers allow us to put in a 3rd floor, and without the 3rd floor, then the number of units goes down to, I think, 17.
Because I know the city of Waltham is very particular about properties, older properties with dormers. They have the building department is something perhaps you might want to check. But if you're going through the comprehensive permit under Chapter 40B, with your construction, not really care much about that sort of housing construction guideline that the city has, or would you still have to abide by that?
Well, yeah, so the comprehensive permit process does involve all of the local boards and commissions. So they're all invited to participate. And we obviously, we're going to own the building forever, and we want to be a good neighbor and a good steward of the site. So we're going to do our best to accommodate all of the requests of the various boards and commissions. Comprehensive permit must still comply with building code and fire and safety code. So there's no, we can't ignore that. The typical comprehensive permit actually is just use. We're trying to build something that is not allowed currently in that zone. So I would expect we would need relief from a use. I would expect we would need relief from parking probably. And of course, if you know the site, the building is very, very close to the property line on the north side. So we'll need some setback relief as well.
Okay, so this, and the fact that you're going through the comprehensive permit, it will make this relief, it will be a lot easier. And is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yes, well, and as you might guess by the name, it's comprehensive.
Yeah.
So we're allowed to invite all those boards and commissions to weigh in one time through one process. It does make it easier.
Okay, and the reason why you're going through this path, as you mentioned earlier, is because of funding, because the zoning change that Councilor McMenimen brought up earlier is something that you're not interested in doing, right? You prefer to go with the Chapter 40B because it's something that you're accustomed to. Because do you think a zoning change in this particular lot will not go through? Is that what your thoughts are? Or is that something that you guys have encountered in the past in different towns or communities?
No, I mean, to be honest, we've just always used Chapter 40B. This is a good example of what it's for. It's for sites that might be not zoned for multifamily residential, but for which multifamily residential makes good sense.
With the 40B, if you fall under the Chapter 40B umbrella, would the funding that you will need to put this together, would it be easier? Is that part of it as well? Or would the zoning change also provide the same sort of way to get the funding?
Well, that's a good question. I don't have a complete answer. I would say, though, that seeking a comprehensive permit while you are also seeking these state funds is a very common practice. It's something that the state funders understand. And as I said, alluded to earlier, Chapter 40B has very specific timelines that everybody has to participate in. So the state funding sources will know, okay, they have a comprehensive permit that goes through these hurdles. We can expect this timeline. It's a little bit more predictable.
Okay. Now, if you were to put 23 units of housing in this building, what are you looking for an average size per unit? I know you're going into 1 bedrooms, 13 1 bedrooms. You're looking two bedrooms at 8 and two 3 bedrooms. What are you looking? I guess they will vary. Take an example of 1 bedroom unit, 13 of them. What were you looking for a size for a 1 bedroom unit that you're looking to put in there?
That is a good question, and I will double check it, but I'm pretty sure the 1 beds are around 800, so maybe 750 and 800 square feet.
Okay.
The 2 beds are around 1,000.
Okay.
And the 3 beds are around 1,200.
Okay. All right. Say, for example, you're not able to get the dormers in. You're going down to 17, you're saying, right?
Yeah, if we can't get the dormers in, we probably don't have a project because as Mr. Barrett mentioned, a concern already with this project is the total development cost. Well, that cost will only go up per unit if we have to reduce the number of units.
Okay. Now, the deed that's going to be issued, you're going to be holding deed, right? You are the owner of the property, correct? Because you are buying it.
Yeah, although, as I said earlier, we would actually establish what's called a single purpose LLC to be the actual owner. And we, Metro West Collaborative, would be the managing member of that LLC. And that's a standard real estate practice. It helps protect liability from one residential location to another.
Okay. would the city of Waltham have anything to do when it comes to this property, as in any sort of rights over the property? Because since they're not holding deed, they're not really, it doesn't belong to the city, correct?
Correct, right. Does not belong to the city. The city would have a deed restriction in the form of an affordable housing deed restriction, which would also be signed on by the state. So both the state and the city would be signatories to that affordable housing deed restriction. And of course, the comprehensive permit is signed by the city. So those are two very powerful, I think, vehicles and mechanisms through which the city establishes what its expectations are forever.
Perfect. In the event that for any reason, we're looking at 50 years from now, this property exchanges hands, it will exchange hands to another entity that will know that these restrictions are in place and this would always be an affordable building, correct?
That's correct. Both the comprehensive permit and the affordable housing deed restriction are in perpetuity.
Perfect. All right. Mr. Chair, thank you very much for the opportunity. Jennifer, thank you very much for all my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Ward 9, Councilor Paz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a Ward 9 councillor representing the Armory, I would like to ask my questions last. I do just have one initial questions. Jennifer, Chapter 40Bs tend to have a certain connotation. Could you please just explain what the difference is between a friendly taking and unfriendly taking? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. So there are three ways to get a comprehensive permit. The one that everybody is most familiar with are the hostile friendly 40Bs, where the developer says, I'm going to do what I want to do and you can't stop me because you're under 10% of your affordable housing stock in your community. That's one way. The second way is through what's called a friendly 40B, which is actually called a local initiative petition. And that's where the municipality and the developer jointly apply for the comprehensive permit together. There is, though, a third way, and it is not widely used because it's really only used by nonprofit developers who are going to be utilizing other state resources. So since we're expecting to utilize the state's low-income housing tax credit program, for example, we can take that and say to the state, we are going to apply for these funds, and we would like you to give us what's called project eligibility for a comprehensive permit. So that's the third way to get a comprehensive permit.
Thank you.
Any further questions at this point, Councilor?
Not now, if you could just refer back to me for the end.
Yep, wonderful. Next on the list on committee is Councilor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have some concerns, I guess some questions for Ms. Van Kampen. I run by there all the time, and parking is one issue. There's always cars parked along the length, the length side of the building, I guess. So there is no parking. Any parking that's associated with the building would have to be on site. It's just limited. I've talked to some other people and they said it's all going to be on site. Can you speak about the parking just a little bit and what your expectations are? How many spots will be needed?
Right. So we have included in our design 34 spaces, which is about 1.5 space per household. Ultimately, parking comes down to a management challenge and a marketing challenge. If there are people who have 3 cars, they aren't going to want to live in our building because we're not going to be able to give them 3 spaces. We also are proposing, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to double check the number, 6 units for extremely low income households. So these are going to be households that earn less than 30% of the area median income. So I would expect households that are probably living on Social Security income and are earning less than $20,000 a year for those 6 units. It's highly likely that those 6 units will have 0 cars. We have an 18-unit building in Watertown that only has 20 spaces. And they're not all filled because not all of our tenants have cars. Of course, Waltham has access to some great public transit. So that will be a benefit. There may be folks already living in the neighborhood or working in the neighborhood who won't need multiple cars to get around. So parking, parking is always a challenge, and anything that gets done with that armory, short of a single family house, is going to have parking challenges. That's just going to be part of the, part of the package.
Understood. It's just with all the zoning board meetings I've attended and every special permit project that I've attended, there's always an assumption that everyone's going to ride a bicycle and there's not going to be need for parking, and it never happens. I would like to see it, someday. It's not reality yet, and even people with $20,000 a year in income still have cars and visitors, and they still have to get places. So that's a concern, and I brought it up with some of the other supporters of the project. I do support affordable housing. So parking was one thing. 2, you mentioned a $2 million loan. You said so $5 million from the city, $5 million from state and feds, and then a $2 million loan. What is that? Is the loan covering the rest of the expenses, and who's paying who's servicing the debt on the loan?
Right. So obviously our tenants will be paying rent, and that income, part of it can be used for payments on a mortgage. And actually, typically the way we look at our budget when we're building out these budgets is we actually start with, well, how much private debt can we borrow? That's where we start based on the rents that we're projecting. Then we turn to, well, how much local funding do we think we could get? And then we go to, okay, now how much federal funding are we going to need to make up the gap? Sorry, state and federal funding to make up the gap. But we always start with the private debt first.
So is there an expectation that specific $2 million loan, or that approximate loan, is there any expectation that the city will have to cover any portion of that?
No, there is not.
Okay. And you had earlier stated that a single entity LLC would be, single purpose LLC would be created, and they will manage the property?
No, the single purpose LLC will actually be the owner. So if you looked up on the assessor's database, you would see that LLC as the owner. If you then went to the Secretary of State's office and looked up the LLC, you would see that Metro West Collaborative would be what's called the managing member.
Okay.
So we would sort of be in charge. We, though, actually would hire a third party to do the day-to-day property management, the 24/7 complaints about snow removal and those kinds of things. And currently we work with a company called Maloney Properties, who manage the St. Mary's Apartments in Waltham.
Okay. So I don't know if it's a comment or a question or a speech, but I just, for the record, people have already talked about the acquisition of the building and land, and there's just something extremely irritating to see a building that is empty and has basically no other use, that was purchased on speculation, to see it, almost like go up in price five times its assessed value. I mean, I can only speak for myself. I can tell you if the acquisition cost is $3.5 million, this project isn't going to happen. It's just not. No one is going to support that. So, if that's the assessed value, that's fine. But I would remind anyone who supports the project that this has just been sitting there. And I run by it all the time. I have for years, actually decades. I know what's there. I know what's gone on there. I want this project to be successful if the neighbors support it and the Ward 9 councilor supports it. I'm gonna support it. I think parking is gonna be a major issue personally, but again, if the neighbors are good with it, that's fine. But I can't support the acquisition cost. I just can't. I'm not gonna do it. And so I just put that out there, because if that's like the straw that breaks the camel's back, then fine, the camel has a broken back. But for a building that's been sitting there unused for so many years, this cost estimate, it is almost just to people who know about the property and are from the city and are familiar with what goes on. It is almost an insult. And I didn't come on here to lecture or to say anything like that. I cannot believe I just can't believe the price. And I fully respect that, you guys are trying to compare different properties, and this has nothing to do with you, but to me, I can only speak for myself. It's kind of it's a deal breaker. I want to be a strong supporter of affordable housing, but I just want to reiterate what some of the other members have alluded to. And I'll leave it at that. I've taken enough time, and I'd like to give the Ward 9 councilor some time. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just caution, we have another matter after this, and we only have 13 minutes left. So back to the ward councilor, Councilor Paz.
I think Mr. Councilor LaCava had his hand raised.
Yes, he does. Sorry. Councilor LaCava, Ward 5.
Thank you, Councilor Paz. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer, thank you. A lot of my questions have been answered, so I'm going to be bouncing around. For you, I would just like to ask Mr. Barrett a quick question on what we currently have in the CPA fund.
You're on mute, Mr. Barrett. Mr. Barrett.
Yeah, all I do is find the button. Right, we just got an infusion, so I'm not exactly sure how much, but it's probably a little over $6 to $7 million presently with the state and the city funding.
Okay, so that is with the 2021 funding already being funded?
Correct. Yeah, and it may be a little stronger than that because we also had extra funding from
what we approved, of course.
I'm gonna. It may be up to 8, Councilor.
Okay, so up to 8. And what do we have any other projects in the fund line? I mean, $5 million out of 6, 7, 8.
We've got the project coming behind this is for the 2 playgrounds, and we've already. Other than that, we're done as far as there is a lot in process that the funding's already been earmarked. So,
but at this point, so if this is approved, we're essentially done approving any other projects for the next year.
We would have probably $1.5 million or less left in the funding.
Okay, that's a little concerning. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Barrett. Jennifer, I'm going to jump around here, so please bear with me. The single purpose owner that the Metro West CD is the managing partner of, is that a nonprofit as well?
It is not. It's what's called a limited liability company.
It's an LLC. Okay, yeah. And is that for any certain reason? Are you able to register these as nonprofits? Is there a reason why it is not classified as a nonprofit?
Yeah, nonprofit has to have a charitable purpose, and the IRS has gotten a little fussier about that lately, I should say in the last few years. So because the property only does one thing, we collect rents and we pay bills. We collect rents and we pay bills. that's not really a charitable purpose, right? We're serving low-income people. That's a charitable activity, but the purpose of the company is really to own and operate real estate. So
Go on, Paul. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, just so the IRS has really clamped down on this, giving that nonprofit status.
What is that? What is that company's name? You may have said that. I might have missed it though. I apologize.
We haven't set it up.
Oh, it's individual for every. Okay, so will that, judging by the numbers that you have run, will that company turn profit?
No, our real estate does not really turn a profit. Sometimes, some years there's $3,000 or $4,000 left over at the end of the year. Some years it's negative $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 a year. But no,
You're running right on costs. You're not okay.
Right.
All right. And you had to speak when Councilor Vidal was asking about the dormers going from 17 to 23 units. You had mentioned the cost will only go up per unit if the reduced units. Do you have hard numbers on that? You didn't. I was just hoping to get an actual numbers. You don't.
No, this budget is very preliminary.
But you can adamantly say just preliminary numbers. You don't have hard numbers. You can say that it will definitely. You don't have an idea of what it will cost to build the 17 units as it would to build the 23 units.
No, not off the top of my head, but if you just took, so you would reduce some construction costs, right? Because there'd be 7 bathrooms that we don't have to build and 7 kitchens that we don't have to build. But for example, the elevator, whether it serves 17 households or 23 households, we still got to build the same elevator.
Would it have to go to the 3rd floor? Will there be a 3rd floor, or would it only be 2/3? Would it be
would probably be 2.5. It would, there might be a mechanical room up in the attic, but it's the building, the elevator, and the elevator room, etc. All of the masonry repointing, all of the roof repairs, all of the windows repaired would all be cost over only 17 units instead of 23 units, right? All of the parking, all of the landscaping would be over 17 units instead of 23. So I don't have hard numbers to give you, but you can imagine how what was $100,000 per unit, now we've only got 17, so now it's maybe $147,000 per unit in cost.
So what is the breakdown on how it's about 500,000 a unit? It looking like, is that a good estimate?
Yes, it's over that. It's around 560,000.
In that, we find to qualify for low income. I mean,
so to qualify low income to move into the unit, the household just has to be income eligible. It doesn't actually have anything to do with
I just find
cost.
That's a very high number to build a unit.
It is, and it is tied to that sales price.
I
just have to say, I just feel I want to remind folks, in 10 years since the CPA has been passed in Waltham, very few affordable housing development project ideas have gotten to this committee. And that's because there aren't many opportunities. It could be another 10 years before another one falls out of the sky. In fact, it could be the Armory that we're still talking about in 10 years. And guess what? $3 million is going to look like a pretty good deal 10 years from now if we wait. Now, so I understand that this is painful, but this is not out of the realm of real life.
So how did the Metro West CD come across this unit? Was it marketed to you guys? Was it for sale, or was it something you approached the owner yourselves?
Yes, we approached the owner directly.
So this was not for sale.
Correct.
And the one appraised value. So did the owner have had it appraised at all, or we're just working off one appraisal?
This is an appraisal we commissioned.
And the owner was okay with that? He didn't commission his own?
He has not, to my knowledge.
He is not, and this is privately owned?
Yes.
So, and has anything been drawn up in terms of this, or are you waiting on this funding? Nothing will go forward until?
Correct.
Correct. So he in turn could have it appraised and come with a different number. There's no purchase and sale before us. This is just a verbal agreement that we're all doing this for, and this could get thrown away. He could come around with a number that is exorbitant and blows it out of the water, and it's not even. Now, is this how your company, or is this standard procedure for how you and your company procures properties?
A little bit. It's a little bit of a mixture. So we have in the past responded to what are called requests for proposals for municipal property. So we just finished a project in Norwell on a former police station site. But our biggest project, which we're working on in Medway, we did negotiate a sort of verbal understanding with an owner. And then we went through a very similar process as this. We went first to the community project committee. They supported the project. And then it actually had to go to town meeting in that case. And it won town meeting. And then we were able to finalize the terms and actually acquire the site. So we will not acquire this site unless and until we get obviously this funding commitment, but also the zoning. Because as I've suggested, and I think is very true, a lot can happen during the zoning process that can make the project successful or not. So we can't buy it until we have that permit in hand.
There's no written agreements between you and the property owner. This is all just a verbal communications thus far.
Correct.
All right. Okay. Now, I was just doing a little research, and I was just trying to find some more on Metro West collaborative development. How many full-time employees do you have, or employees in total?
We have 6 employees currently.
And what is your annual operating budget?
That's a good question. It's around 750,000, I think.
And obviously, being a nonprofit, these are things we could find online. I'm not
right
making and divulge any private information there. Okay. I believe there was some more questions along the lines, and I will have some more, but for now I am good. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, and thank you, Mr. Clerk, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. There's no hand raise, so it goes back to Council from Ward 9.
Thank you. I just would like to speak in support of this project. As the Ward 9 counselor, I've had countless town halls, community meetings. I've met with folks from the neighborhood there last week. A couple weeks ago, actually, we were talking about making improvements in the Highland Spur, which directly abuts that area. So we actually got a commitment from the Traffic Commission to hire a design firm to redesign the entrance of the Highland Spur. We also have a commitment from the commission to improve Curtis and Bellevue, like that very corner. So the city is well on its way to make the improvements. Of the only concerns I've had from neighbors, which are traffic related. I think everyone in Ward 9 really wants the city to invest in affordable housing. That's the one reoccurring thing people want, and it's actually at the top of people's priority lists. I just would like to remind folks that the price is never going to be great, but the timing couldn't have been any better. We're living at another time of crisis. There's like 43% of Waltham that's at risk of being evicted, and the only way that we really get to prevent this type of housing insecurity and future evictions is if we actually invest and commit ourselves to permanent affordable housing. And this is actually one of the few projects that have made it this far in the pipeline. The 2 requests that were made in this committee so far are online, and Daria, Director of Watch CDC, was kind enough to provide, which is one of them is the report on the appraisal, and the other one is the letter from the chair of the Waltham Historical Commission. I just don't see a need to further delay this project, seeing that time is of the essence. Mr. Chair, I now move to approve this matter.
Okay, I think, just to refresh everyone, we asked for 13 letters of support. The approved application to the National Historic Register of Historic Places, the independent appraisal, and the historic covenants, and we have not received them yet. Ms. Gear did provide them in the chat room links. I see there's 2 links for 2 of the documents, but I have not had a chance to read them yet. We have a motion on the floor for approval. Any comment on that motion?
Yeah, I'd like to speak.
Councilor Stanley.
Thank you. This project is something that I'm in favor of moving forward in a lot of ways. We often talk about creating affordable housing and how much we're all in favor of it. And, some of my colleagues would have a position that, they don't like to see affordable housing funds being spent on maybe temporary or voucher programs, what have you, but rather to create permanent housing. And I understand what they're saying, in the past. And I think what we're hearing tonight is just how difficult it is to create affordable housing. Jennifer brought up a good point that there really hasn't been any other proposals coming before the city. The city of Waltham has done a gallant job of trying to create housing itself, but it's really not the business of the city of Waltham to be doing that. And so, how it's done really is working with community development corporations like Watch and Metro West Housing, throughout the state. So, I understand there was a lot of questions tonight, and I personally don't think we should move forward tonight just because I want there to be some more discussion and have some more questions answered, get that information. I'd rather go to the full council with a better understanding for everyone about what the project entails and how difficult it is to get something like this done. And so we can make a better decision on if we want to move forward. So it's for that reason that for tonight's purposes, I'm going to move to table the matter tonight. And again, I look forward to supporting it going forward, but I know debating is not debatable. We have another meeting that's supposed to be starting right now. I think it's in the best interest of this project if we table it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Mr. Clerk, could you read the members of this 5-member committee so everyone knows who's on the committee?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Councilor Durkee, Councilor McMenimen, Councilor Paz, Councilor Stanley, and yourself, Chairman Darcy.
Great. So the motion is to table the matter, and tabling is non-debatable. All those in favor say aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Aye.
can I make a point of parliamentary procedure?
Sure.
So the Ward 9 councilor made a motion to approve. I'm going to be in support of tabling, but should his motion be made spoken about first, discussed first, or do we just go straight to the tabling question?
No, the tabling has precedence.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for interrupting.
So again, we have a motion to table made by Councilor Stanley. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, in my opinion. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the applicants that spoke tonight, and we look forward to having you in at a future meeting.
Thank you.
Actually, it's 7:05. We're past our time. I think perhaps we should move to recess this meeting till after the 7 o'clock meeting has completed, and if we have time, we could finish.
Mr. Chair, why don't you just continue with your meeting, unless Chairman Vidal has a different thought. I mean, I think it'd be less disruptive for you to continue and then us to call his meeting when you're done.
Great. So Chairman Vidal, do you have a problem with us continuing this meeting?
No, I do not. Please carry on.
Great. Would the clerk read the next matter?
The next new matter, the CPC recommendation for the allocation of CPA funds for improvement to McDonald and Thompson Playground.
Councilor McMenimen makes a motion to hear from all off-committee members. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. I think we have planning person Lacrosse, and I see Recreation Director Abruzzi. Would either of you care to speak on this matter, or even Chairman Barrett?
I will just give, got unanimous, it was unanimously voted to approve the funding for it. It was done quite a while ago, actually, when we didn't have funding, and once the funding became available, we were to go forward, and that's it.
Great. Any other speakers, either Mr. Lacrosse or Mr. Abruzzi? Mr. Lacrosse.
Good evening, everyone. I'll try to make this as brief as I can. So again, just to talk about the two projects. Just for everybody, for a knowledge of the history of this, we started this back in 2018, hiring a designer through the use of our block grant program. That money was used to come up with a design for both parks. McDonald Playground, which is located off of Newton Street, and Thompson Playground, which is located off of Charles Street. Both these qualify for our CDBG funding program. The improvements that we're looking to make are listed in all of your packets. But I'll just go through them as quickly as I can, and they're repetitive at both parks. So this applies to both McDonald and Thompson. We're looking to implement new playground areas that will cater to 2 to 5 year olds as well as 5 to 12 year olds. We're looking to implement a new fitness area, splash pads at both parks, a combo basketball futsal court, which is currently, you can see one at the Gilmore Playground. We're looking to replicate that. We're looking to incorporate a zip line at McDonald, shade areas at both McDonald and Thompson, as well as picnic tables, walkways, site furnishings, and lighting for security. Before you, we have an application that totals an amount of $3,246,096, which is based off of preliminary estimates that we asked the designers to put together leading up to bid time. We are currently on the central register to go to bid. We have a pre-bid meeting that is scheduled for next Tuesday, where we'll have interested parties come to both sites. We'll go over everything with them, and then they'll have 3 weeks to provide us with a bid result, at which point we will then look to hire a contractor based off of the bids that come in, and then we will hopefully start construction in this coming spring. Back to that fee that we got from the estimates, the breakdown that that total comes from, there's approximately $1,766,000 estimated to complete the McDonald project. And then a little bit under that is the Thompson Playground estimate, which is roughly $1,479,000. We are supplementing the CPC funding request with approximately $435,000, which is going to be coming from our block grant program. And that is how we get to the total $3,246,000. This will be a collaborative project between the planning and the recreation department, like we've done on other park projects. We work very well together, and we're very excited to get this project rolling in both the McDonald and Thompson Playground areas. So that's kind of all I have for just a brief presentation, and I can open it up for questions.
Great. Any questions? And I think Thompson is Ward 5, I believe, and McDonald is Ward 9. Is that a correct statement?
I believe so, correct.
Great. Questions to the planner or to Recreation Director Abruzzi? Councilor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I was very excited to see this, so I'm happy that more playgrounds are being fixed. I do have an awareness that the Ward 5 counselor had asked in the previous round of questions about total CPC funding. And do you happen to have an idea of, as far as availability, overall what the availability of funding is for any projects for CPC? I guess this would be under open space and recreation.
I'll answer that. It would come from open space rec and recreation, conservation recreation. However, we've got a general fund also that 10% of all the funding that comes in from the state and the city, 10% goes to each account. That's historical, open space, conrec, and affordable housing. And then there's the general fund. So it would be a draw on the open space, conrec, and the general fund, Counselor.
Just in general, do you happen to have an idea of the approximate amount?
Right. Again, we put money in from the city, the state, and money that we had earned interest and other last month, and I believe it's just under $8 million.
Okay, so
I'd have to get. I apologize. I should have had those.
No, that's fine.
Well, no, it was asked before, and I didn't have it, and I should have, and I apologize.
No, my concern is just as a freshman counselor. I love this project. I think it's great, but maybe I can ask offline, but it might be helpful to know some of those numbers, because when you start talking 5 million the last project, 3 million here, maybe we have to prioritize as counselor just so we know what's coming down the pipeline, because I'd hate to approve something and then totally screw up a future project that has a higher priority. But in general, I'm more familiar with the Thompson Playground because I go by it. It is in high need of, I see kids in it all the time. It's a pretty lousy park. I love these improvements, and I'm in full support. I mean, I like what you guys did, and I think it's great. And I'll give you a quick anecdote. I met someone who moved here, and they said when they saw the city was investing in the parks, that's what caused them and their family and their children to come here. So I think it's a great thing. So, okay, you guys heard enough from me, but that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Next on the list is at-large Councilor McMenimen. You're on mute. Turn off your mute.
My apologies. Thank you very much. So let me go to the Park and Rec people. This is awesome. I'm absolutely ecstatic over this. It's finally happening. So my first question is, with Thompson and Cutter Street, are all the pocket parks now finished? Will they be finished?
This should complete them, yes.
I'm sorry?
This should complete them, yes.
Who's answering that?
This is Nick Abruzzi.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. So this should complete all of the pocket parks for the city.
We'll be cycling around. Actually, this actually marks when I first started. I think Lowell Field had just been done, and then McDonald was right after that. I want to say it was in 2003, maybe. So this is the second time around for this park and for Thompson, which is.
Well, under your regime, this was done a while ago under previous regimes, and I was there for that.
That's right.
And when we had the neighborhood meeting for Thompson and Cutter both, so let me just back up a second and say, my daughter used to live on Flood Street. She lived there for 4 years. Both boys spent time in that condo, and the only place that she could go with them in the carriage or by the car was to Cutter Street. And I went there frequently. I would meet her there. And as you know, Cutter Street, the playground portion is separated from the the splash pad by a fence. And so we really never went in the summer. We only went in the fall and the spring. And the teenagers use that park. The parents and families, mothers especially with young children, use that park. That's why to see the park features for both of these parks, both Cutter Street and Thompson Playground, I'm thrilled for the ages that are being addressed here. Some of the other parks in the city have other purposes. If you've gone to all of the openings, I've been to every one of the openings, I've been to the neighborhood meetings. They all have different purposes. They all have different designs. The neighbors for each of the other parks got together and decided some wanted splash pads, some wanted water elements, other parks were not. The neighbors did not want it. For example, out in the island, Logan Park, they did not want a splash element there. And the mayor and the Park and Rec Board, who is in charge of this, went right along with all of the add-ons or the recommendations, positive and negative, from the neighborhood meetings that were given to them. And so looking at these last two playgrounds, I can't tell you how happy I am to see what you're going to do with both of them. I was a big advocate for Thompson Playground probably 25 years ago when Councilor Mandel was the councilor, because that playground, forgive me, was like the lost stepchild. It got nothing on a regular basis, and it got bits and pieces. And when we finally put a water element in there for the hot summer days, because that's basically the getaway for a lot of the inner city families. There is no getaway for them. It's just like the concerts on the Common. That's their getaway. They don't get out of the city. They're all working people. And this is their ability to get away. I am thrilled with the design for both of these. I'm in complete support. And if no one, are you on a committee, Councilor Paz?
Yes.
Are you on this committee? Are you going to make are you going to make a motion? Because I will not overstep you. You're the ward council. Are you going to make a motion for approval for these?
Yeah, I would like to move for approval. I just saw someone else.
I'm going to say no more, and I'm going to listen to Councilor Paz. Thank you.
Great. Next on the list is Ward 9, Councilor Paz, representing McDonald Playground.
Thank you. Director, if you can speak to the improvements you made in terms of ADA compliance for both of these parks.
As far as the playgrounds, they'll all have rubberized surfacing and be designed to accommodate people of all abilities. So adding the rubberized surfacing, which if you see current playgrounds, the newer playgrounds that we have at, for example, Kinnear Warren, Gilmore Playground, they all feature rubberized surfacing, which is accessible, and all of the elements that we're building have platforms to make them accessible as well.
Thank you. And I understand you had a robust public input process.
We did. We had a great meeting in one night. We had both meetings held. We followed that up with renderings that we put up on the website and allowed for feedback from the community, which was we got a lot of great feedback. And from that feedback, obviously we can't change the whole design, but some of the feedback that we were able to get to our designers, who did a fantastic job on these designs. And they made changes where applicable, and ultimately this was approved by the Recreation Board. So I would like to say double down on what Jimmy said. Working with planning has been a great experience, and we look forward to future with them.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I just would like to note that there is an urgent need for both these playgrounds to be improved, especially in the fact that they're going to accommodate a lot more, at least relief. The water parks are a great amenity for folks who will be struggling to get by in our hotter and hotter summers. But yeah, I just would like to not delay this conversation and delay the progress made in these two projects and move to approve the matter.
Great. We have a motion on the table to approve the sum of $2,811,000. $811,000. Yes. Okay. Hold on.
On the motion.
Yeah. Hold on one second. I'm just going to read the motion before we go forward. That the committee vote the sum of $2,811,000 $1,096.79 be allocated for the improvements to both the McDonald and the Thompson playgrounds. On the motion, we have Ward 5 Councilor LaCava.
Mr. Chair, and thank you for the motion for approval, Councilor Paz. The other park being in Ward 5, I do want to just speak quickly on my recommendation that this does go through. I do want to thank Mr. Abruzzi. He answered several emails from myself throughout this process and phone calls. I do applaud the community input in them using it. And I know I harassed him a few times on that process as well. I know this area in Ward 5 for this playground, it is heavily Spanish speaking, and there was talk on the first meeting of the difficulties of getting people to this meeting. And I do want to thank Councilor Vidal, who helped canvass that neighborhood with the Spanish speaking constituents and try to get them involved. So I do want to thank him as well. And again, on the overall process of this, I do want to thank everyone. And Mr. Abruzzi, real quick, I know you mentioned one of these playgrounds was one of the first you did along with Lowell Field. While I have you on recording here, are we going to get to Lowell Field soon after this as well, I hope?
It's on the plan. We can't give you dates, but it's funny.
Wait a minute, that's out of line here. Come on.
I believe it was 2002 when Lowell was the last time it was renovated. When I first came on, I came on in 1998. I think it was right after that Lowell Field was taken care of. But
great, thank you again for all the work here, and to Mr. Waters and LaCrosse as well. Thank you all.
You're welcome. Thank you.
From the Ward 9, Councilor Paz, for approval, and a roll call vote has been requested. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilor Durkee,
Yes.
Councilor McMenimen,
Yes,
Councilor Paz,
Yes.
Councilor Stanley,
Yes.
Chairman Darcy.
Yes. By your vote, you have approved this matter. Thank you very much, and thank you to all the members that spoke here this evening. Would the clerk read the next matter?
Last matter, Mr. Chairman, is the City Council's fiscal year 22 - fiscal year 26 capital budget.
On the matter, are there any speakers?
I mean, given the fact that we're running out of time, would it make more sense to table this, Mr. Chair?
Is that your motion?
Yeah, move the table.
Move to table is non-debatable. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, the ayes have it. The matter's been tabled. Would the clerk please read the next matter?
That is all, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Councilor Durkee has made a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you very much. We've adjourned at 7:23, and I would like to thank Councilor Vidal for allowing us to go over into his time slot. Thank you very much, everyone.
Chairman Vidal, I'm ready when you are.
All right, let me see. I think make sure everyone's here. Let's see. I believe we have, let me see. Are we missing any? I think we got everyone.
I can call their names and we can figure it out.
Yes, the License and Franchise Committee come to order. Can the clerk please call the roll?
Councilor Dunn. Councilor Dunn, you are on mute, so we can't hear you.
Present.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Present.
Councilor O'Brien.
Present.
Councilor Stanley. Councilor Stanley. Councilor Stanley, you're also on.
Present. Present.
And Chairman Vidal.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have all 5 members present.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. We have Councilor O'Brien makes a motion to approve the minutes from, when was it? From 11/16/2020. On the motion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Thank you.
Aye.
Counselor, I'm sorry, Mr. Clerk, what do we have for new matters for tonight?
So the first new matter is a fuel storage permit at 245 Fifth Ave.
Thank you very much. Counselor Dunn makes a motion to hear from all off-committee members. All in favor, say aye.
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 Say
Aye.
no. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Who do we have here, Mr. Clerk, from this particular fuel storage request?
I believe we have a number of people on the call. We have Mr. Finger, we have Mr. Mueller, and I believe we have Mr. Marr, as far as what I could see.
Perfect. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being here. I believe Mr. Finger was the last person who spoke in front of us at the committee, full committee, correct, Mr. Finger?
That is correct.
All right. Will you please give us an update or go over pretty much the stuff what you discussed, a summary of what you discussed this past Monday, please?
Actually, what I'll do is turn it over to Jack so he can earn his keep.
Sounds good, Jack. Mr. Mueller, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Finger. Thank you, Counselor. Attorney Jack Mueller, representing the applicant NWALP Property Owner LLC. This is for fuel storage license at the property at 144th Ave, which is now known as 245 Fifth Avenue. This property was granted a special permit by the City Council last year. Previous to that, we had received Zoning Board of Appeals approvals. We have appeared in front of you on 2 occasions, one for a minor modification and the other for the address change. We are here tonight on the application of the fuel storage, having previously appeared in front of the full council last week. The property is going to have a 632 vehicle parking garage. That's the reason we need your approval for the 632 vehicle parking garage. Mr. Finger has documents. If we wish to go into anything involving the plan, he can share the documents with you. And Mr. Marr is able to answer any questions. He's a representative owner of NWALP Property Owner. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mueller. Councilor McLaughlin, you have a hand raised, please. Go ahead, Councilor McLaughlin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. So based upon that information you just gave us, Attorney Mueller, so no changes compared to the information that you gave us last week?
No, Counselor.
And I did have somebody during the course of the week bring up the address change. Can you just touch on that briefly on why you had to do that?
Sure. The site has Fifth Avenue and Fourth Avenue as the east and west boundaries. The previous address was 144th Avenue. However, the front door will be on Fifth Avenue. The fire department, in discussions with the fire department, had expressed if we were able to make an address change, they would appreciate that, because naturally the fire alarm system would like to go to the front door. The alarm system will be in the front. It's a safer entrance, although we will have an entrance in the rear that is scheduled to be the loading dock and delivery entrance. It just makes sense to go ahead with the request to put in for a Fifth Avenue address. We were granted 245 by the engineering department.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, again, somebody that was watching last week asked that question, and I thought it would be good if we covered it here. The other thing is we had comments and concerns last week from Mr. Pavone with regard to local workers being used on the project. Is there anything new that you can add to that?
Well, Local 560, we've worked with them before. As a matter of fact, Mr. Marr and his group did the 200 Smith Street, the old postal distribution facility. They're the ones who ended up turning that into the project that we now see with the Boston Dynamics Elevate Bio. It's actually a fantastic looking project. And Mr. Pavone and his group had appeared. We engaged with them and ended up bringing them on for some work. And that's our intention to do the same with Local 560 here in Waltham on the project at 245 Fifth Avenue.
That's great. Thank you. And again, many of us on the council want to see local work go to local workers, and we appreciate your efforts towards that end. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor McLaughlin. I have next one on my list. Councilor Dunn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually have a question. If nothing's changed from the initial presentation of this application, the reference is for a fuel storage license, not for parking. I thought that the parking was already approved. Can I get clarification?
Yeah, parking is approved. I'm sorry, Council. Parking is approved, but we're required because of the fuel that'll actually be in the vehicles, we're required to get a fuel storage license.
Okay, thank you. So that's the reason you're before us tonight, is for the fuel storage license.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Dunn. Anybody else like to speak?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval on this.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for approval. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say no. The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, councilors. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Mr. Clerk, what do we have next? What's next?
Mr. Chairman, the next matter to come before you is a Class 2 renewal for Chrisland's Auto, Inc. at 477 Main Street.
All right, thank you very much. I imagine we have all the paperwork submitted, nothing's missing.
No.
All right, I haven't heard from the ward councilor on this. I think we should be good to go on this. Because I'll make a motion for approval if find it necessary, please.
Move to approve.
All right, Councilor Dunn makes a motion for approval. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say no. The ayes have it. Thank you. What else do we have, Mr. Clerk?
That is it for the evening.
All right, thank you very much. What is the wish of the committee?
Move to adjourn.
All right, Councilor McLaughlin makes a motion for adjourn. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say no. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Okay, everybody, I'm ending this one and there'll be a new one for 8 o'clock.